Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, and we just talked about the New York Knicks making a splash deal to re-sign their head coach Tom Thibodeau. Across town, there was all types of splash as well, where we got the heated rivalry of the New York Mets and the New York Yankees in the Subway Series. Just a short 2-game series, but it did see the Mets sweep the Yankees for just the second time in the history of this rivalry, the only other time being in 2013. So again, only a 2-game series here. It's not like you can put a ton of stock into it, just like you can't really do so for any individual series, but definitely a morale win for the Mets, who are just riding high right now on vibes, where it just seems like everybody is enjoying themselves. Jose Iglesias is singing for the team, becoming a pop star. Grimace is becoming the face of, the rally symbol with the Knicks. But I do want to talk very quickly here. Everybody points to the Grimace throwing out the first pitch as the turning point in the season. He did so on June 12th. And the team rattled off 7 straight wins afterwards, but it was kind of more so if you take a step back. I look at May 29th when the Mets ended up losing to the Dodgers 10-3, and that was the day where the controversy broke out about Jorge Lopez throwing his glove over the netting into the crowd, and the Mets ended up DFAing him, and it was just highlighting a dysfunctional organization for the Mets, where at that point they dropped to 11 games under 500, and the season just seemed to be already lost, and it was a mess. But instead, they are coming back to life in a very loud fashion. Since that game, they are 21-15 and are in a playoff spot. Now, unfortunately for them, they are inherently going to be buried a little bit in terms of the divisional race because of who they are competing with for that sense, where nobody in the NL East is going to catch the Phillies at this point, even though the Phillies have I believe they lost yesterday and dropped another series. That's 2 straight series losses coming out of the All-Star break for them. But regardless, still have a 9-game cushion on the second place Atlanta Braves anyways. But, at this point, for the Mets to be in contention for a playoff spot would have sounded like a lot early on in June. But not just that, but they are holding the second wild card spot, granted in what is an incredibly close race there, and there are no guarantees whatsoever. But it has just been a really positive development for the Mets since then, and I don't know. You could probably start to put a case together of Team of Destiny vibes. I feel like the MLB, more than any other team, or more than any other league in American sports, does tend to have those Team of Destiny stories actually come full circle and lead to a championship. The Rangers kind of felt like it last year. I would say the Braves in 2021 definitely fell into that category. So maybe you can start to talk yourself into the Mets at this point, but that's obviously still a long way away. They have the trade deadline coming up. What seemed like a for sure seller just a month ago, they are now probably going to be more on the buying side. Now, I don't expect them to, get extremely aggressive in terms of their pursuit of adding some talent, but we could definitely see them working around the edges there. They have a very big series coming up against the Atlanta Braves, who are the lone wild card team ahead of them, of course, in that divisional race as well. So we'll see how that plays out for them. But on the other side of this, while the Mets are only getting better, the Yankees are still continuing to drop, and I by no means am I overreacting. The Yankees, I would almost guarantee, are going to be a playoff team this year as long as Aaron Judge and Juan Soto are both healthy. They But they are dropping quick here, where they were 50-22 midway through June on June 15th. They are now 10-22 since then, one of the worst records in baseball. Now, the good news for the Yankees is despite how negative it has been about the Yankees over the past 5-6 weeks, they're still just half a game, I think a game and a half back of the Orioles for the division. Now, the O's also played earlier today, and last time I checked, they were killing the Marlins. It is 6-3 right now in the bottom of the ninth. Bases loaded, actually, though, for Jazz Chisholm. So we'll see if maybe things change there and the Orioles end up with a surprise loss, but we'll be sure to keep you updated on that. The Yankees are still in this 100%, and I would say in general, even take the American League East out of the conversation, that there really isn't a team in the American League that feels like a juggernaut. You look in the National League, and ultimately it does feel like the Phillies and the Dodgers are really the two teams to beat. So, it's a lot of uphill battle, I would say, in the National League. American League, it is very open. So we'll see how that all plays out. As it currently stands for the Yankees, they're in the mix up for this division. I'm sure they're going to make some type of moves at the trade deadline following this series loss. The future of Juan Soto with the Yankees is by no means guaranteed. Going to be a free agent this summer, going to be extremely expensive as he is still just 26 years old. And we've already heard Steinbrenner make comments about whether or not it's feasible to have this high of a payroll for an extended period of time. And I feel like the Yankees are probably going to buckle and give Juan Soto everything they can. But even still with that, you're going to have so much money wrapped up in Aaron Judge and Juan Soto that there are going to be other financial handicaps, 100%. So we will, my point being that they could re-sign Juan Soto, and I still would have my worries about what they look like long term. But what we know right now definitively is that they are in the conversation as long as they have the two of them. The problem is they don't necessarily have all that much help outside of the two of them. ESPN showed a stat last night about how there were only 4 players on the team with an OPS plus of 100 or better, in Judge and Soto, and then Stanton and Ben Rice. Rice fell out of that conversation as well, too. He's looking at 98, and even if he was at that 100 mark, Rice, even though he's demonstrated some good power since making his debut, he's still a very unknown commodity, so it's not like he is somebody you can heavily bank on. Now, as for Stanton, he's been out since late June, which has definitely not helped the Yankees, and he was in the midst of having a nice bounce-back year where last season was probably the worst of his career, so seeing him be able to rebound is definitely a positive. Gleyber Torres is somebody who you still feel like, he's having a down year, but has been good in a lot of the past handful of seasons, so ultimately, we'll see how it plays out after he comes back from injury, but they just need a dude. They don't need him to be out in the field. They don't need him to be some speedster in the base paths. He just has to hit, and specifically hit home runs, drive guys in. And I feel pretty confident that that's a role that he can take advantage of for sure. But looking at this game and sort of staying with the topic of Aaron Judge and Juan Soto kind of being it right now, in Game 1, the Mets walked Aaron Judge in his first 4 plate appearances. Didn't even give him the opportunity to hurt them. They only pitched to him in the 9th, actually, where Diekman was able to strike him out. And, ultimately they got a little bit more from the others in Game 2. Unfortunately, not quite as much from Judge himself. Game 2, I know you look at the score and it ends up being a blowout, but the Yankees were actually in that game for a while, but unfortunately, kind of the theme for the Yankees in this series was not being able to drive in runners in scoring position. There was some stat that they flashed, something like 3 for 30, 4 for 30 with runners in scoring position, specifically against the Mets this season. So, ultimately, it is a little bit of a misjustice there. And again, the I would say that the overall final score doesn't quite indicate how in it the Yankees were. For a lot of that, maybe the pitching ends up blowing up again. But, part of that issue as well was the fact that Garrett Cole has just not looked like himself up to this point in the year, and you have to feel like eventually he's able to come back around, considering last season he was dominant, ends up winning the Cy Young Award, and we're not far removed by any means, but Cole this season has been really struggling up to this point. In this game, too, he pitched 5 2/3 innings. It was 8 hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, and 6 earned runs, allowed 3 home runs along the course of the way. So, apologies for throwing out all of these numbers at you, but now his season stats as a whole: 7 starts, 35 innings pitched, 39 hits, 12 walks, 21 earned runs with 9 home runs. He has a 5.40 ERA, which is the worst of his career. I believe the worst whip of his career as well, rocking a 1.457 at this point. Now, again, there's still plenty of time for Cole to turn this around, but the Yankees are going to need him, and they're going to need some extra help. We'll see exactly how that plays out over the course of these next couple days. Bullpen depth is one of the biggest things that is being pointed to in terms of the Yankees and how they can get better right now. They're also desperately looking for a leadoff hitter, so both of those are things to keep an eye on with the Yankees moving forward here. But they are set to face off against a weekend series with the Boston Red Sox, who just yesterday made a big signing in bringing back Alex Cora on a new 3-year contract extension for him to remain the manager. And that's what we are going to be diving into next. Before we go to break, though, very quick, I just mentioned it was 6-3 in the 9th for the Orioles. Jazz reached on an error, and now a sacrifice fly and a single has that game tied up in the bottom of the 9th, and a chance for De La Cruz to walk it off for the Marlins. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But we're going to be taking our next break here, and we're going to be diving into that story about the Red Sox extending Alex Cora. So stick with us, and we will be right back after this quick break. Don't go anywhere.